Here to talk about that, Rob Garson. He is the president of the American Association of Jewish Lawyers. Thank you, Mr. Garson, so much for joining us.
How wonderful to be with you this morning.
Thank you. So Benjamin Netanyahu said that Hamas's latest demands are, quote, delusional. And I kind of agree with him, but I'd like you to tell our viewers what was so terrible about the last proposal and what you think could be an actual deal to get our hostages back. They've been there since October 7th, and we're very concerned about how many are even surviving at this point.
Not just surviving, but how many are being tortured constantly. The worry that I have, like most of the people in the United States, we worry about especially the women, especially the children, knowing the mutilations and the atrocities that went on October the 7th. What does their day look like? And it haunts me on a daily basis. What was so terrible about the proposals was that the stages of drip feeding the release of hostages, knowing that this time would be taken in terms of the ceasefires for Hamas to rearm, restock, rebed in. They're already taking most of the aid that's coming in to Gaza in any event, and they're taking that from the people that need it. The problem here is this. Is Israel going to be looking at a long, prolonged war? Or alternatively, are we going to have a resurgence 5 years, 10 years down the line with a renewed Hamas or not? The fact of the matter is they're holding hostages, innocent women, children, and men, and they need to be released now. We are negotiating with criminal captors, and it's nonsensical in my view.
Agreed. However, when you look at other allies or actors in the region that are close friends with the U.S., namely Saudi Arabia, they chimed in stating the requirement should also include recognizing Palestine as a state. And then you have Netanyahu, rightfully so, vowing to finish this war. That is a rock between a rock and a hard place for not only Netanyahu, but also the U.S., who's trying to broker a deal. How do you balance all those different interests while also trying to make sure that, as you pointed out, that this does not recur 3-5 years down the road?
Well, it's a very textured situation, and it's a very difficult thing to negotiate. One thing that one cannot have at the moment is Israel negotiating with a gun literally to its head and to the head of its citizens. This is the same Abu Mazen that, when meeting Blinken, approved $3 million worth of pay for slay payments to terrorists who committed atrocities on October the 7th. In my respectful view, there needs to be a complete change of who the who the Palestinian leadership is, who the leadership is on the ground, because you need to have a partner in peace. This goes back to Arafat days. Do you have a partner in peace who is actually capable of delivering what might be a Palestinian state where there's security for their own citizens and security for Israeli citizens along the way as well? The fact of the matter is, I'm not seeing emerging from the Palestinian camp anybody who's capable of delivering upon those promises, because otherwise we're going to have the same situation, just like when Israel in 2005 withdrew from Gaza, that you're going to have Hamas being voted back again into office, but this time in the West Bank, and then they're going to start restocking from that perspective using American money that's been given to Iran that's now going to be funneled over to them. In my view, if Saudi want to control this, let them propose whether or not they're going to have a hand in controlling the Palestinian Authority. I don't think they can.
Let me ask you about the hostages very specifically, because Israel recently announced that they fear as many as 50 of the hostages are dead, not the 29 that was an official estimate. Can you tell me a little bit more about this issue? Because we're so disappointed. The Red Cross, UNRWA, other multilateral organizations, they have failed to confirm the life of the hostages or deliver medicine to the hostages. Tell us more about the hostages.
Well, the problem is we just don't know about the hostages, and you've highlighted this. UNRWA has been shown to have been a front for Hamas. Their teachers, they've been embedded with Hamas. They've had them throughout the schools, the hospitals, the doctors. Everybody's been hand in hand with that. And the world has been funding it, despite the fact that everybody has been saying, look, you in UNRWA schools, you have been teaching children for years and years and years to hate. The Red Cross has been shown to be completely and utterly ineffectual. This calls into question the existence, in my view, of the UN at all. What utility does it have in this world? The problem is we just don't know what's going on. I saw a terrible interview yesterday about children who had been released from their captivity, stating that they can't sleep anymore, that that on Friday nights they go to bed in cold sweats because they're worried this is going to happen again. We just don't know what's going on with these hostages, and I dread to think the sequential rape that is going on, especially with the women that are being held. It is haunting.
Very much so. And the thing is, what's troubling for me, along on top of everything else, usually with rational actors, you can negotiate with economic interest, financial interest. Maybe they want someone in power that you can both agree on. But it's from their perspectives, Hamas and many other radicals, the only thing that they want is to annihilate Israel, and you cannot negotiate on those terms. So how do you see, if they get past this, hopefully within the next couple of months, because like Betsy mentioned, those hostages are dying by the minute. The thing is that how can we get to that level of peace or some portion of it?
It's interesting you say that, because I completely agree with you in terms of the rational actor perspective. We would all like to think that every person wants the same things in life. You want to be able to have a job, make money, be able to spend on your family, sit down with your children on a Friday night, find out what they've done wrong during the week. And Israel, in my view, was lulled into that false sense of security when just before October the 7th, they had approved 20,000 extra work permits from Gaza to come into Israel, and they thought that people want those same things. We need to have a mentality change amongst the Palestinian people. I worked prior to being a lawyer, I was an archaeologist, and I worked throughout the Middle East, including doing rescue excavations in Gaza. The fact of the matter is, there is a deep, acquired and taught hatred of Jews there. And when you speak to Palestinians and you say to them, oh, do you want your own state and to live alongside an Israeli state? They say, no, we don't want that. We want our 48 lands back. That's despite the fact that Israel has been there for 75 years. What there needs to be is a deep and abiding educational program amongst Palestinian children and people that Israel isn't going anywhere. And despite all of the riots that are going on the streets, especially in the United Kingdom, especially in the United States, because we've been taken hostage by anti-American, anti-British, anti-Israel factions because they're anti-everything, they're anti-establishment. Those people need to be told Israel isn't going anywhere. So let's start from that perspective. You're not getting what you call 48 lands back. Jews are indigenous to that land. That is recognized and has been recognized for years. Now let's start from that perspective. Get this out of your heads. Once people start realizing that, and they start realizing that America is going to back Israel, come what may, Britain is going to back Israel, come what may, in that regard, then we can start having proper conversations with proper guidelines. But the problem is,
Well,
we're feeding...
Mr. Garson, you just said the U.S. will support Israel come what may, but actually the signals that are being sent by the Biden administration, and particularly Anthony Blinken, are more mixed than that. Can you tell us what the Israeli leadership currently thinks about the Biden administration's negotiations and stances on these ceasefire proposals?
Well, Israel has been very thankful of the Biden administration to this point. Right at the beginning, Antony Blinken went over to Israel, saw the aftermath of the atrocities, refused to have any negotiation when people said, oh, these are false flags, this didn't exist. He said, no, I've seen it, I've understood, and I've seen that. So in terms of the view of Biden in Israel as was when I was over there in Israel, they were very thankful, very supportive, and really supportive of the American people, especially the American people that have gone over. I went with a wonderful, when I was on the plane, with a wonderful group of Baptist pastors, and they were traveling over, and Israelis were in tears to see those people coming over. However, we're starting to see a classic wavering. Biden today said that Israel's actions have been over the top. And he says that because, he's worried about the Michigan vote that's coming in. The problem is one really can't have a great deal of confidence in his foreign policy perspective. We've seen multiple missteps by over the past two Democratic administrations when it goes to Benghazi, Afghanistan, the Arab Spring arising. There is a complete misunderstanding of the Arab mentality by those in power, and especially from Biden. The Arab world respects strength. And in fact, when I was speaking to certain people from certain Arab countries, they've said to me, why hasn't Israel done the job more thoroughly? They don't understand. The Arab world, when you speak to people in Saudi and Bahrain, they don't understand why the Israelis haven't been even more belligerent, why they have withheld themselves. And they've said to me, Robert, you don't understand. The Arab world respects strength. That doesn't necessarily mean that Israel is going to act disproportionately. It has groups of lawyers on the ground that actually vet what the targets are and whether or not they're proportionate.
We definitely agree with you. And I didn't like what President Biden said last night in terms of Israel's response was over the top. We have to check Biden. But thanks for joining us. We'll have to have you back on soon.
And we'll pray for the hostages. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We all are.
Stay with us, folks. More First Edition after the break.